and diminish it here. All right, cool. All right, so here we are today. Last week we actually finished, and y'all forgive me, I just saw that earlier. I should have went on and shipped you the notes from last week because we went through the whole church in one night. We went through Sardis last week. We went through the dead church. And so tonight we're going to deal with the living church. We're going to live with the living and faithful church called Philadelphia. So some of you Eagle fans may well reward yourself tonight because it's going to sound like we're talking about the Eagles, but we're not. Okay. All right. Okay. Philadelphia, Church of Philadelphia, verses number, we're reading the passage. We read the whole chapter last week. And so now we're going to continue to read as we exegete, because our goals are to become blessed, as the text says, in those things. So let me count. I've been putting that front part on each lesson. So, and I don't mean to waste your paper, but I did that so each lesson will stand counted by itself, but it's still connected. Okay. I want to get past this and go straight to the point. Okay. Okay. Here is the verses for tonight. Let's focus on verses 7 through 13. And I'm going to ask the reader to read verses 7 through 13. I know we read it last week, but if you're like me, you understand we have to read it continuously. That's what teaching is about, okay? I have a volunteer, I'll read.
And the angel of the church in Philadelphia write these things. Saith he that is holy, he that is true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth and no man shutteth, and shutteth and no man openeth. I know thy works. Behold, I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. For thou hast a little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee, because thou hast kept the word of my patience. I also will keep thee from the hour of temptation, which shall come upon all the world, to try them that dwell upon the earth.
11 through 13.
Oh, sorry. Behold,
Go ahead.
behold, I come quickly. Hold that fast which thou hast, that no man take thy crown. Him that overcometh will I make a pillar in the temple of my God, and he shall go no more out. And I will write upon him the name of my God, and the name of the city of my God, which is New Jerusalem, which cometh down out of heaven from my God. And I will write upon him my new name. He that have an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches.
Okay. Now, what we have here in this particular passage, again, it's been isolated to the sixth church from which we'll be talking with. I'm not going to deal with Laodicea. So now what you see in the progress is you see we went from Ephesus to Smyrna, Pergamos to Thyatira, and Sardis to Philadelphia. And I'm going to go ahead and give it away. Like Sardis was last week, Philadelphia is the opposite. Sardis was a dead church. Philadelphia is the live and faithful church. And we'll see both of those in exchange. Okay. Now, I want us to notice some things, like I said before. No, I don't want to get that. That shouldn't come up. 5 historical things outline the importance of Philadelphia. And the reason why I tried to give you that with each of the churches, if you remember, like I told with Ephesus and how it was a center of commerce, etc., and how, certain churches were just, or certain cities, if you will, the church that was in that city was a characteristic of that city, but some churches were like set up as Thyatira was to Pergamos as a governing city. You had to kind of go through that to get to Pergamum, all of those things. Well, tonight, again, there's some things I think if we understand about the city of Philadelphia, we'll understand that it translates to why he's going to make these promises to the church that's in Philadelphia. Okay, now don't never mind those points; they should have come up in order, but they're going to prime the first question or the first fact. The first fact was Philadelphia was founded as a border town. Lydia, Mysia, Pergia are all bordered to Philadelphia. So geographically, if you were to put it on a map, you will see that Philadelphia is like a border town. And because it was a border town around other towns, French towns benefit, French other towns, it had this kind of unique benefit, if you will, to be, because if you can imagine you being between a number of different kind of cultures in the same place, one of the purposes or one of the flows that come through that is as a border town, it was predominantly founded to help to spread the Greek culture. So it was intricate, if you will. It was necessary in trying to get the Greek culture around, the globalize. You'll sometimes hear the word Hellenist. No, those are Greek-speaking Jews. Well, that happened because they expanded. They intentionally expanded. So Philadelphia was a city that was built for the primary purpose of expansion. And I want you to take that in the mindset to the church. And so hence I raised two questions. Can a church be lively and faithful as an anti-mission mindset? What about an embassy that has become acclimated to its host standards? In other words, the two things I'm raising up here is Philadelphia got, as I said, the opposite against Sardis last week. Sardis had nothing good to say about it. Philadelphia has nothing bad to say about it. Yet it's in the middle of all of these intercircles, and circles of cities, like again, Mysia and Pergia and Lydia, but because it had a mindset for people, it actually flourished without faking. It's in the midst of all of these different trends, and so you think about the church, because what some of us see as bad, it would actually be better to be in a place where there are more people that you can affect if you're people-minded, than to say, hey, look, we built our church way in the woods, so nobody else will know where it is but us. And true enough, you ain't got to worry about people infiltrating because they got to find you first, okay? Philadelphia was in the place or in the primary function. And so I asked the question because their faithfulness and their livelihood wasn't based on the fact that they isolated themselves from the rest of the world. It was done in the midst of their faithfulness, in the midst of other people, their liveliness in the midst of other people. And so I think you've heard me before define that one of the characteristics you can look at the church in terms of its primary purpose is like an embassy. If you were you were in control of U.S. money directly, would you spend to put money for a U.S. embassy on a non-inhabited island in the Caribbean? That may be a wonderful place to go and visit, but if it's not in the midst of people, it's really missed its purpose of exposure. And the purpose of an embassy is to equate or to literally educate and affect the people that it meets to the government or the station of power that it represents. You understand what I mean? So it's almost like the church in Philadelphia had this as is being a border town. I'm trying to, and the only reason I'm spending some time on it, you'll see why when we come up to the statements. Number two, second thing you need to know about Philadelphia, the city, is that the name means brotherly love. So it's named intentionally with its purpose in mind. I know some of us probably know some people. Have y'all ever asked people what that name means? Because now it used to be simple names. Now you hear a lot of names. And then when people even change their names, we say, okay, you change your name, but what does that mean? And I would think that thought ought to go behind the naming of a place in or thing if you want it to meet its ultimate purpose, right? So the name of Philadelphia means brotherly love or friendship love. It's more accurately friendship love. And I'm going to tell you why in a moment, because it is a teaching base, and I will make sure I take the opportunity to do that. The name itself is simple because it reminds the components, the people who go, the constituents of that church, of its required component to become perfect or mature. And if you think about it, you go ahead and make this note in your notes, the Mark chapter 12. I got it isolated on the passage. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put it up, and I want somebody to read for me. It's Mark. It's the Gospel of Mark, chapter 12, verses 28 through 31. Because when I talk about the building components of a church, and it's not, I wish we had it. I'm just going to simply say, if you don't have these two things, there's no way you can effectively reach people as an embassy of the kingdom, or church representing God. And here it is. Here's the passage. I'll go ahead and pull it up. Really? Don't do that. Y'all see what I see? Do y'all see what I see?
Yes, it grayed out a little.
Yeah, it grayed out, and to give me this thing said I might need to shut it down. Oh, the devil is a liar. Listen, okay. Philadelphia means friendship, brotherly love. I bet you I can do it this way. Because if I shut this down, if it goes down that way, it says give it time to wait. So y'all see what I saw last week. I'll try to see if we can get it squared away. Give me just a second. It'd be.
So you said Mark 28.
Yeah, Mark 12, verses
Mark 12, 28 to 31.
Yes.
Okay. And one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, and perceiving that he had answered them well, asked him, which is the first commandment of all? And Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, and thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, and with all thy soul, and with all thy mind, and with all thy strength. This is the first commandment. And the second is like, namely this, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself. There is none other commandment greater than these.
Now, I'm gonna go ahead and teach you. As you saw, it went on down, and I said, well, it didn't kill the whole program. It just killed my PowerPoint. So let me just do it this way, and I'll go ahead and restart it, and we'll still be good. Notice that the thing I was saying in that passage is, though, can you guys still see me?
We see you. We don't see the PowerPoint.
All right, I'll get it up just as soon as I'm on the other screen. And can you see it now?
No.
Okay, can you see it now?
Now it's starting to share, but it just came up.
Okay, cool.
Yep. We're good.
Okay, so. Okay, there it is. Now, embedded in a live and faithful church has to be love for God and love for each other. If you understood anything that happened in that 12th chapter of Mark, what Jesus was basically saying is that, okay, we know the Decalogue, the Ten Commandments Decalogue, okay? They had 613 that they spun it off of, and they were on this bent to try to find out, well, what's the most important commandment? And they were trying to, they made mountains out of molehill, and Jesus really reduced it. And this is a lesson for really the church now, but it comes directly from Philadelphia church. He says that if you get these two things right, if you put these two things, and it's got to be in order, but if you put these two things right, you can actually fulfill every command in the law. Number one, you got to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And you got to love your neighbor as yourself. And if you can do those things, matter of fact, he said, there's no greater thing, and there's no greater task. There's no more important thing. You can't feed, you ain't got no business feeding folk you can't love. You can't, all that stuff is secondary to loving God first, and then loving people. And then remember that the only new commandment he gave is he kind of gave some ups on the second one, because initially the second commandment was love your neighbor as you love yourself. And then if you know some folk, like I know some folk that we don't do a lot good, we don't do real good at loving ourselves. He said, okay, I'll tell you what, drop that. Love one another like I love you. So he kind of corrected the second command with the new command. The first command is still love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your neighbor as I have loved you. And if you do that, you'll do all the things right. So Philadelphia as a church was named right. And even though our name ain't Union, we are not Union if we don't have love for God first and love for each other. Okay, so again, the takeaway here is embedded in a live church, embedded in a living church, embedded in a faithful church. Because think about it, love is ambiguous. I talked about that last week, but faithfulness is the function that happens, and it's only firm and consistent when a love is there. There are some things you didn't put up with, because the truth of the matter is, me too, it's not you, but me too, because you didn't love it, okay? When you gave something up, said, no, the only reason you paid for this, or you went through hell for this, is because of the love you had for a certain thing. And the love you have will actually help your faithfulness. The love if you got a love for a thing, faithfulness kind of comes with that. It becomes a support of the ambiguity of the word we say love. So when we love something, man, I love it, so I stay with it. I keep bowling, and I hurt my hip, but I'm still got a bowl, because they love it. It's the love that makes the faithful or the functionality happen. So embedded in a live and faithful church is love for God and love for his people. And we will never reach faithfulness in this aptitude like a Philadelphia church if a true analysis is we have a problem with our love for God, or we have a problem with our love for people. Okay, now let me kind of do this, because I don't know if I've ever done it in a teaching area before. Because how many of you heard me say that there are various words for love before? And I think I've given you 4, right? Okay. Oh, so now the Greek language actually has 7. Okay. The biblical language only has 4. Okay. Are y'all familiar with those? Philadelphia represents one of them. And since we talk about brotherly love, which is a slight inaccurate definition, and I'll show you why, because I'm going to give you the 4 right now, because we're talking about the name of Philadelphia. Okay, that's it on my third bullet point. Can y'all see it? Can you make it out? Storge is love of family. So when you say I love my family, that's not Philadelphia. So when you talk about brotherly love, I love my brother, that's not really brotherly love. Brotherly love, like with family love, and I love my mama, my dad, I love my mama, all that stuff. That's storge. That's storge. STORGE. It's storge. Okay, that's the love we have for family. Agape is, we hear about it, but it's an unconditional love that's really out of the benefit of people. And it's not because of, but it's in spite of. It's a choice love that you make. Now, you don't have agape if you're treating them like they treated you. That's not agape. Agape is unconditional, has nothing to do with what they're doing to you. So it's always the benefit of a person, et cetera, so on. Okay, now, I'm not suggesting that we do not need agape in our fellowships or in our church, but we got to understand why Philadelphia is named that way. The next one that you see in here is phileo, which is the root word for Philadelphia. Now that's love between friends. Now watch why does this make a difference? I mean, why am I even putting emphasis on Philadelphia? Because watch this. How many of you know some folk that struggle loving their biological family at a family reunion? Come on, how many of y'all know some folks that I know some folk, that, they might get to fighting at a family reunion. They might get to fighting, but Y'all got to agree that that's kind of strange because most people find it easy to love your family. Talk to me. Okay. And so every member in church that is also a member of your biological family is not your challenge to love unconditionally. Uh-oh, are y'all catching me? Uh-oh, did I mess y'all up? Philadelphia challenges us to get a love between people who are not born in our house and still love them like their family. Are y'all catching it now? Because that's what this whole thing is. Philadelphia actually excels in making folk love like their family, even though they're not family. I told you, Storgay is loving folk because they're family. Philadelphia is like a friendship love that is so strong that it becomes like brothers and sisters. Okay. Is anybody getting where I'm going? Okay. Yes or no? No. Okay. Did I confuse anybody? Raise your hand. Because the third love that's only mentioned once in the whole Bible, and it ain't mentioned that much because it's eros. It's the love. It's the romantic sexual love. Okay. So when I told you about that commercial the weekend before last, when I said that's love, and love knows no gender, love knows no race, love knows no handicap. Don't fall for the don't get bamboozled, don't fall for the hoodwink. Okay. Different types of love. Okay. In that particular Philadelphia, and the church is, and the reason why I'm there, church has to be challenged to love people who are not your family like you love your people who are your family. Ooh-wee. Does that sound good? No? Y'all looking like, man, Pastor, you should have went on vacation. Don't even tell us. Because see, most of us we don't have no problem stopping by and feeding your family when your family visit. You know, think about it. When a funeral happens, well, that's our family. We got to come. Okay, what about when the person's not your biological family? The things that you would do for your biological family is what Philadelphia expressed some, matured spiritual function and treating them like they were family. Okay. All right. Loving them like they were family. Okay. So third thing. Philadelphia sat over a large earthquake. Now, because Philadelphia was situated on the earthquake like our west coast, they actually had a fault in AD 17. And in AD 17, they had this major earthquake. I said they had a fault. They had an earthquake in AD 17 because they sat on the fault. They were built on the fault. And when they had this major earthquake in AD 17, history shows, non-religious history shows that one earthquake set a trend of tremors that happened just almost routinely all through the time. Now, can you imagine the only earthquake I've ever been in is a little small one we had in Delaware some 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And just to emphasize the scene of that day, I was where I'm at now, but in another room. My office was in another room. And my daughter was in this room that I'm in now because, I kicked them all out and made their room my office now. But here's what happened. David, my daughter, who pretends to be not scared of anything or anybody, came running in my office because the house shook, the whole house. And she said, Dad, what was, because, the question is, what do you do when the house is shaking? Guess what you do? What would you do? You would seek cover, and they tell you that if it's a not strong house, right, with not strong foundations, what would you do? Wouldn't you flee? Wouldn't you get out? Because the safe place, they say, in a hurricane, not hurricane, in an earthquake, is where ain't nothing gonna fall in your head. And so if you went out in the yard, you'd be tremble, but unless the earth opened up and sucked you in, then and that you just gone. Pray and ask God to help you. But that's gone. The emphasis to why I'm saying that is Philadelphia sat over an major earthquake event that left city with tremors for these years, and they will have a special then note for the statement that says a pillar in the temple. A pillar is not like what you sleep on. What it is a strong, stable issue that suggests that when forces happen, like strong winds, and you got a strong foundation with a pillar in it, it says, I got you when the earth is shaking. I got you when the ground is unsettled. I got you when, it seems like you're standing on shifting sand. Does this make sense? Because when we read that verse, this is what they heard in their history. We were very familiar with earthquakes. Now, I mean, they were very familiar with earthquakes because I have no history with earthquakes. When Michaela came in and asked what to do, I said, hey, all I know to do when you don't know what to do is pray. Pray. You know, that's all you can do. Okay, so temple of God, he shall go no more out, because going out would be what they did. It was the habit that they had every time it shook, because they couldn't trust the buildings. They would always find themselves running. Okay. Climax to climax event to commit. Number 4, Philadelphia, after a major earthquake, had been given aid by the Emperor Tiberius. And so in appreciation, they changed his name to they changed the name of the city. It was unofficially or officially renamed Neo Caesarea, and the new city are subnamed the new city of Caesar. So they knew what it meant to be given a new name. Again, y'all read that in the passage. I give you a new name. So everything he's writing to them, they could identify with the history. They could identify with there. So when we read it, we need to be aware of the history so we can see how they were seeing it when they got it. Okay. Now, the fifth and final thing is Philadelphia had a Jewish synagogue in the middle of that city, and the Jewish synagogue were one of those places that boasted of being I should have put it in my notes, Holy Ghost headquarters, Okay. In other words, they claim to be to have the keys of David. They claim to have the right to open and shut the door to God and his kingdom. So access, ability, and authority were intricate in their city. So think about it. Inside this city of Philadelphia, not the church we're talking about, but a Jewish synagogue where people presuppose, and this is the way, and we the only ones that got a key. We got the keys to, and we got access authority to put you in or put you out, et cetera, so on. And so this sat in there. So part of the challenge of the church was a people steeped in Judaism, old Jewish rites and rituals, and they thought that they were the way makers, that they were actually the guideposts. Okay, so he said this. Now, all of that stuff being taken in, we can now execute the rest of this, and we can finish before the night. Here it is. Verse number 7. To the angel of the church of Philadelphia write, these things said he that is holy, he that's true, he that hath the key of David, he that openeth, that no man shutteth, and no man openeth. Okay, now, I was, in preparing for this lesson, I was kind of almost, you know how you see yourself in another light? I had an epiphany, because I know that when I, quote unquote, close the sermon, every one of us have habits of saying, and saying, I often refer back to a phrase in this, he'll open doors and no man can shut, and shut some doors. Y'all probably heard me say that 1,000 times. And well, I didn't recognize, or I didn't really realize that I'm quoting the Revelation passage when I'm saying that. I guess it was just something out of some other passages or something, other ideas, but it was kind of interesting to me that it came directly from this concept. So look at verse 7, because in verse 7, the self-disclosure of God, of Christ, in verse 7, he basically mentions in 4 parts of talking about who he is. Remember that these things go back to chapter 1, but here he tells this church that was so familiar with his historical things. Number 1, he said, I'm holy. Okay, that's the Greek word hagios. Y'all heard it before, but it means that's the standard. I am the approved standard, So he is, when he says, speaking to the church who's there, because they're hearing about standards from like the Jewish synagogue and others that y'all got to do. He said, wait a minute, hold on. The one who speaks to you is the one who is the standard. I am he that is holy. I am he that is, not trying to be. I'm the standard, the word holy. I've already been separated. I represent an approved standard. Now, the second thing he says is that I'm also true. I'm the authentic one, and I'm the one that's been, I'm accurate. You don't have to make an adjustment on me. I'm not guessing. I'm not progressive knowledge. I am truth. I am the way, the truth, and the life. And y'all do know that the blessing of that is what? He said, You come to know the truth, and the what? The truth will do what? Set you free. He said, now, falseness, I don't care how good it feels, never has the ability for freedom. But he said, I'm the one that's holy, and I'm the one that's true. I'm the one that has the concept that you need to get. And I'll go, because I'm not trying to make it all sermonic, but I want to make sure. He said, thirdly, I'm the one that got the keys of David. Now, everything he's saying is in direct relationship to the historical data I gave you. I'm the one that got the keys of David. Matter of fact, I was the one that named David, that came through David. I'm the only person that knew his mother before his mother knew him. Christ is referring to his, having access in the keys. Now, I think we would be remiss not to also tie in the fact of Matthew. Go ahead and write it down now. We'll get to it later, I think. Matthew chapter 16, when he said, I've given to you the keys to the kingdom. Okay? I've given to you, the church, the keys to the kingdom. In other words, I got it, and I'm giving it to you. But right now, he's not giving it. He's not saying give. He said, it comes from me. I'm the one that has access. Keys. If people want to get this, it's one thing. Keys get access. Somebody, I ain't gonna call no name, but somebody got in my office, and I told him, how you get in my office? I said, you ain't got no key. He said, oh, I got a screwdriver. I said, that means you broke in. Okay. Now, there are times I forget my keys, and I broke in my door too. And because it ain't like anything in there people want to steal but a sermon, and I will give those to you. Okay. But there's some other reason I try to keep it locked down. But the fact was that the key is access. Don't miss the David. It is a lineage thing. It is a blessing, but it is access. Everything that is allowed you to come in, nobody, absolutely nobody has the kind of access that he can take you to the throne of God and make you an heir of the kingdom. Only one person, and that's him, and then he gives it to us, which is a very privileged possession in our part, and we're not free to do with it as we please, though, okay? Now, he said, I'm the one that has the key of David, and finally, I'm the one, not the Jewish synagogue, not the emperors, not Tiberius, none of that. I'm the one that opens and shut. And when I open it, nobody can close it. And when I shut it, nobody can open it. When I shut it, nobody can open it. When I open it, nobody can shut it. All that was basically saying is I got authority to approve and to allow. I am the one holding ultimate judgment, okay? So why did Philadelphia need to be told this? It's interesting because, again, the challenge from Philadelphia in its faithfulness is, should we be listening to somebody else's functions? Should we be functioning according to somebody else's ideas, feelings, etc.? And Jesus arrests all that before he gets to them and said, I'm the one you really need to be concerned with. And that's an amazing fact. Every church needs to know is the one who really is the approved standard, the accurate, the access, and the authority, okay? Now, here's the second thing he says in verse 8. I know thy works. We've seen that every time. I have set before thee an open door, and no man can shut it, for thou hast little strength, and hast kept my word, and hast not denied my name. Now, watch what he does, because here's the part I like, and if you got a question, kind of raise your hand. Here it is. First thing he does when he talks about I know your works is that word ergon, because every time he says he knows the church, he knows them by their ergon, their works. I know on the other Bible study we're talking about plus nothing. But remember that the Bible that we study also said that faith without works is dead. When we say that we have a knowledge of God that is a saving faith, that means inherently in that is a function that aligns actions to that which is approved, which we just talked about that, okay? So, because that is, I know your works, your ergon, my ergonomics, that's the Greek word there. He says, I put before you a divine opportunity. Three things he says in this particular passage I think is noteworthy. Number one, I set you where I set you, and I set you where I set you strategically. I put before you an open door. And you can go through Paul's phrases because this is not Paul writing, this is John now. But you'll see this thing about open doors of opportunities. Anybody here know that open doors, when you talk about open doors, are things that would not be allowed to you had it not been for a predispositioning of God, or if you will, an access opening put in before you. And the only thing about that, when Paul said it, he said, there's a door now before me and I have to act on it, because if I miss that door or that window, we call it windows of opportunity, that I may miss my purpose. Okay, I may miss my purpose. So here's the takeaway I wanted to give to you kind of quickly. What do you think God's design? I know it from Philadelphia, so let me give it. God's purpose for Philadelphia was to affect, in the ministry mindset, like of a missionary, all those people of, Perga, Myra, Lydia, all those people, so that they might know the kingdom's agenda. Do you think God also has a purpose in mind for us when you didn't ask for it, but he seeks you next in your cubicle at work to an atheist or somebody else who's looking for a word of God or an explanation? So do you think is hapstance, or is this a divine opportunity, a confirmation, so that it might in effect confirm your calling? Because when we say, okay, I trust in God, okay, do the people, not in your pew, not in church, not at union, but at the people that you're stationed at, actually see an effective faith operating, so that they can say, okay, I can get that. I can see how to trust God in a situation when it looks like giving up would be easier or doing something other. That's the takeaway question, because again, he says basically, I know who you are and I placed you where I wanted you to be, and with intentional access. And then there's something else to be stated in the passage is elementary. I'll say it. It's a demonic opposition. He's also aware of demonic opposition, because in that passage, look, I said before thee an open door, and no man can shut it. It did not say, I'll teach this again. He did not say they wouldn't try. Okay, it's like that passage we love to read, no weapon shall prosper, right? It didn't say it wouldn't be formed. He said, no weapon formed against you. In other words, the weapon is formed against you, but it will not prosper. He's saying in this particular case, guess what? Though I've opened this door for you to do what I purpose you to do, and I set you there, they can't get rid of you until I say so. Man, this is, I think it's confirmation when we start thinking about our purpose is not just of saints in the sanctuary, but saints in all of our societal places where God has put us. So there's demonic opposition, but you have been made contest proof. No man can shut it. No man can shut it. No man can stop the opportunity that I've given to you, because those things are under the control of God. Third thing he says, and finally is this. One of it is why. It's because you've been dutifully operative. You've kept the faith, even though you've been challenged. You've challenged yet complained. Now, watch this, because it's real clear in this term. I can say, okay, if Mike Tyson beat up Robin Givens, how many of y'all would say, oh man, he the champion of the world? Come on, talk to me. I mean, y'all know that was alleged, right? I mean, all that stuff that, I'm just bringing it up. But if he beat her up, to me, ain't no accolades, right? There's no accolades. If Robin gets in the ring with Mike Tyson and knocks out Mike Tyson, that's the news thing. That's the news thing, right? Not Mike Tyson knocking out Robin Givens. Watch what this, because sometimes what we do is we try to equate our faithfulness with our ability to be, we got the numbers on our side, we got the people on our side, we strong, we got the finances, we got the XYZ. Quite the opposite is revealed in this text. Their faithfulness did not come in favorable conditions. Watch what happens. He says, for thou hast a little strength. The first thing is, I know you ain't gotten much. You ain't got much working for you. I mean, it could be reduced. There's a lot of ways to interpret it. I know you ain't got a lot of members, or I know you ain't got a lot of money, or I know you ain't got a lot of, I know you ain't got a lot. I know that there's more people against you than for you. But here's what he says. Even though you were the Robin Givens in this Robin Givens versus Mike Tyson fight, he said, here's what you did. You kept my word. and you didn't deny my name. In other words, you kept fighting. And you knocked Mike Tyson out because Mike Tyson couldn't get you to stop saying you were undermanned, you were the underdog, and because you were in that situation, you did not give up. You know, you had a little strength, but you kept his word, and you has not denied his name. Now think about it. That kind of underline says that part of the challenge is to see if we put it in a situation, and then with all of that stuff we be talking in the sanctuary, will we keep it true when we're standing in front of people who not sanctuary familiar? In other words, will we stop? Okay, you pray and you want to lead prayer every time when we in the sanctuary, when we in the fellowship hall. Can I pray, and we pray 2 hours, and then all of a sudden you had the job and everybody getting ready to eat lunch, and ain't nobody that going to church, and you try to look like, make sure ain't nobody looking at you before you pray. Now, what's crazy just about that? You're gonna be bold and want to pray in front of everybody who's faithful, but you won't do the same thing when your faith is really challenged. This is that concept. He said they were dutifully operative. In other words, they were challenged, yet they were compliant. They stood the test and they won. Because though small and weak in some regard, you stood as if you were strong, and you were non-denial. I thought about this as a takeaway. In how many ways could we be denying Christ? It used to be a song a long time ago, and I ain't gonna even try to. It said, if you were accused for being a Christian, would they find enough evidence to convict you? You know, in other words, would the only reason why they call you a Christian that you show up on church on Sunday, would there really be characteristics by which you did not deny him before men? That was the carryover and the trait of the Philadelphia church. Okay, now verses 9 and 10 go together, because in verse 9 and 10, our exegesis or our training or teaching kind of makes some promises. God made some promises in the passage, and some promises, as I said last week, are prerequisite. They're conditional. You got to do certain things to get certain things, or the result of your doing will leave with certain things. And that's not salvation. These are benefits to salvation. So I want to make sure we get that. Watch the promises though. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie. Y'all know who we're talking about, right? Because I did the history. Y'all know who we're talking about, right? Who are they? Okay, yeah, that's the synagogue of the Jewish synagogue that was there. And here's the problem in their day. There's still the problem in our day, okay? When a sinner, i.e. worldly person, is looking for truth, why do you think it's so hard for them to find out what the truth is? I'll raise that question just to see if anybody want to try to take a stab at it. Why do you think it's hard for a person in the street to find out what the church is? What the truth is? Almost
A lot of different truths.
So-called. Say it again. Because there are a lot of different truths, and everybody claiming to have the truth, right? And yet, half of the ones who say they have the truth, ask them. So, okay, matter of fact, even the union, this person, I know, okay, show me, where's that in the text? And you will see a strange silence, a strange silence. Because everything you hear is not always backed up by what the word of God, right? And so it's likewise in this thing. He said, God says in this promise that I'm going to do ultimately 3 things. The first thing I'm going to do, he's going to ultimately do it. Ultimately, and I should have put ultimately because that also has to do with time. He's going to do it to the highest level, but it's not going to be done as quickly as some of us want. First thing he's going to do, and I think we need to bite off of this and look at it. He's going to expose the fake. Wow. Because notice what he does. He refers to that, and there was not in the city of Philadelphia an actual synagogue called the synagogue of Satan. Y'all need to know that, okay? There was actually not a synagogue of Satan. So why does he refer to it as the synagogue of Satan? Real close to the dialogue. Real close to the question. Think about this, because I'm raising the question, because if we get this one right, we can see why. I don't care whether we're talking about union or alpha. Alpha is the beginning of the alphabet. As far as I know, I don't think anybody's behind us in it. It was TUV, well, it might be a victory, TUVW. Might be a W church, but yeah, what are something down in Delaware and Dover. But my point of it is, there's not been a single church that is identified with a church of Satan, but we just identified that there are some churches that are saying they're the synagogue of God, and he says, they're liars. And what would make them lie? What would make them lie? The word here for liars is a word that if you've heard me talk about biblical history or biblical books in some of the teaching class, I say, okay, there are a group of books called the apocryphal books. The apocryphal books are other religious books that are not included into our canon, which we call the Bible, okay? And then there's another group of books called the pseudepigrapha. The pseudepigrapha are a group of books that we've actually said, we got evidence that these were not authentically written by the persons they said were written by, okay, because of the date and some other things. And so they've been separated. Now, pseudonymity is to lie on or to say, almost like we get our word blasphemy. To blaspheme God is to lie on God. When, well, God told me to tell you that. And we're effectively lying on God. I mean, anybody here ever been lied on? Anybody here ever been lied on? Okay. Anybody here ever lied? Okay, I'm just trying to see if I can get everybody's attention. Okay, here's the point. He said, it's a church lying on me. And so because they're lying on me, it's not the synagogue of the saints, it's the synagogue of Satan. In other words, what they're lying and telling people is what I didn't tell them to do. And so if Satan, the agenda is what's the emphasis, that means he's telling, that church is telling people to do what I've told them not to do in the word. And yet the people who are being fooled are thinking I'm saying it and I'm telling it, I'm going to expose, they're lying. That's why the text says judgment shall begin first in the house of God, because again, there's certain things that we have said from pulpits and pews that we said God has said and God has not said it. And the first thing he's going to do is expose the fake. Okay. I'm going to show that they're liars. Okay. They do lie. They are pseudepigrapha. They are operating pseudepigrapha. And I could have made it fun. I really could have made it fun, because I told you I came up with 5 brothers and sisters, and we would come up certain times. I ain't gonna tell you I wouldn't be on that point when I was coming up. If my brother or my sister had some stuff, I might use one of those pseudepigraphic lies and say, Mama told me to tell you to give me some. And Mama ain't said nothing. That's the same thing. That's the same thing they said about God. Is, when we lie on God, God said, okay, I'm catching up with that, because every time you tell somebody to do something, I didn't tell you. You're not the synagogue. You're not the sanctuary of the saints. You're the synagogue of Satan, because what you're doing is getting mass disobedience away from my word. Now, the second thing he says that he would do is he would exalt the faithful, because remember that what they were saying, it seemed to be a battle among the churches. Like Sister Manlow said, because what happens is we're all on the street corner while the person looking for truth is entertaining. We say, oh, we got it here. And they say, no, they ain't got it. We got it. No, they ain't got it. We got it. So it seems like we're peddling the thing. And what God's going to do is he's going to actually authenticate his official peddlers, if you will, those one who've been standing. He's going to expose, he will make them to come and worship before their feet. The word here, worship, the reason why it's so strangely identified and interpreted is because it's the word proskuno. Proskuno in Greek literally means bow down. Y'all ever heard he'll make your enemies your what? Footstools. In other words, he'll make them bend and bow down before you. You can almost carry this over to Joseph's dream when he made his brothers bow down. He said, I had this dream that y'all gonna come and bow down. Not so much worship you like you God. Don't take that passage to mean that. In other words, he's going to identify the fake, but he's also going to exalt the faithful. He's going to show I'm with them and I love them. Now, here is a great point that I want you to catch. I told y'all when we started this that none of the churches are in Israel, right? All these churches are in Asia Minor. None of the churches in Israel, okay? Why is love important here? Because remember, Israel was the first object of God's love, global love, trying to love them, and they rejected his love. Not that he fell away from that and then took us in, because it was always God's part to bring us in. It was just the fact that Israel's going to see God loving the Christian and not the practitioner of Judaism. He's going to see God loving them, and the evidence is going to be that I have loved thee. In other words, he's going to now take the Gentile in front of the Jewish sanctuary or synagogue and say, okay, wait a minute. I'm showing the Jewish person that I have loved these Gentile people, and my love is bestowed upon them, because whenever God's love was bestowed upon them, there was all kinds of favorable traits, okay? All kinds of favors for that to happen, okay? Now, the final thing he says in this one is, I'm going to exempt the faithful from future faith friction and give them favor for their faithfulness. That's a lot of F's, but y'all know how I get a little intoxicated. Okay, so it's the last part of this passage in verse 10 that pretty good. He says, because thou hast kept the word of my patience, which is a phrase I really want you to underline now, and when you get the notes, kind of see it, because it's a phrase that needs to be understood together. You kept the word, and then he uses the word patience. It is a pregnant term, okay? He said, because you kept it, because in the challenge of the conflict, in the challenge of people who would want you to compromise, in the challenge of the people who would conspire and say they ain't talking about all that stuff, you had a choice to make. And the choice was, man, do I just go along and just give up? I'm tired of fighting this stuff. He says, because you kept it, you stayed with the battle, you did the Robin Givens thing and hung on to the word, then denied faith. He said, and you did it in patience, which means it didn't happen in a pretty time. It happened in hard times. Our faith is not proven in times of favor. Our faith is tested in times of friction, okay? So, because you kept it when everybody was talking about you, here's one of the benefits I love about this. Is like a benefit that's going to roll over now. The first thing he does is promise, since you went through friction now, for you, I'm going to make it so you don't have any friction later. Okay? Because what this verse tells us, it leaks in a time or a season when everybody who's professing faith has got to be challenged. Your faith is only faith when it's been proven. Okay? Let me give you the passage to go with it. I need two readers. I need these two readers to read this passage. I want somebody to go to 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, and somebody to go to James chapter 1, verse 3. 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 9, James chapter 1, verse 3. Anybody? Somebody?
I got it.
Okay.
Then the Lord knows knows how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to reserve the unjust under punishment for the day of judgment.
Now watch that. That Bible said that God knows what he's doing. He knows how to take faithful people and decrease out of his favor the frictions on their faith. In other words, we would say he knows how much we can bear. He knows how to keep certain things, but he also knows how to preserve the wicked people and people who done lied on them. He gonna make sure they see some hello without the O. Okay, he knows how he's gonna shift it to make some folk be broken. Okay, that's that passage. Let's look at James 1:3. James 1:3. Somebody read that for me, please.
Knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience.
Wow, watch this. The trying of our faith. I told the word try is to test. Every single one of us. Well, if you bought a house that was new, right? If you had a house that was new, my dad used to build houses, so I know. Before you can occupy that house has to go through a series of tests. L&I come to do tests. License and inspection, they do tests. Has to have water tests, electrical tests. And that whole thing about testing is that they put a load on that house, electricity, they put a load of water in that house for the pipes. They do some stuff, because what you don't want to do is try to live in a house that has not been tested, because if you go in that house not been tested, it may fall on you. Deacon Hall may be on this tonight and may not be, but some of y'all saw him build. Deacon Hall, I'm gonna give. We were working on something, and I started a little project I was doing on my own. You know what he did to my project? You know, well, he didn't do it to my project. He did to, yeah, he did. He did to my project. I built some shelves in my garage, and you know what he did? He came and hung on it. Because what he said, if it don't hold me, it's gonna fall down a little later. I'm so glad it didn't fall, because he would have told all y'all that stuff. But the whole point of it is, it made sense, because why put stuff on a shelf that is not been tested? Here's the thing. Some of us say we got faith, even this COVID season and some other things are gonna happen. We're never left to profess we have something that won't be tested. So what he said is, some of you made the test when you had to go against your neighbors, your nosy neighbors, et cetera, trifling people, and you stood the test like, again, I'm gonna say Robin Givens did against Mike Tyson. And there was an analysis. So if anybody seen that, I was talking about you stood up even though you had less on you. He says, so since you stood it then, I ain't gonna make you go through what I'm gonna make everything else go through. So some people didn't take the test. Now they just, I ain't gonna do it. I ain't gonna. What you're really doing is putting off for a greater test that nobody is going to be exempted from except those who've already passed the test. And this is what he says: I'm going to put a test on them. I'm going to take them away from the test from which I've already created for the whole world, which shall come upon all the world. Y'all see it in blue, to try them that dwell upon the earth. In other words, everybody, la-di-da-di, everybody's going to be tested with your faith. Okay. Now, the only way to kind of get away from the big test later is to start passing a little test now. I was familiar when we went to college, when I went to college, they used to call it that if, you know, again, and high school, if your GPA was so good at a certain point, there were certain tests we didn't have to take because they said, okay, you didn't have. And so I worked real hard to make sure that if I can get out of a test, man, I'm going to do my darndest in those early tests so I don't have to have that other test. And so that was what it was. But hupomone is consistent function under pressure. So when our faith is tested, it's been put under a situation of aggravating, non-aligning pressure to see if you will still stay active and align with God when it's easier to quit, okay? And that's why each one of us will be tested. That's an easy takeaway from Philadelphia. Philadelphia passed it, and because they were able to do that, one of the blessings of Philadelphia that they were exempt from that test, okay? Now, here's this final promise, and I tell you we're through. Counsel to continue. What do you tell somebody who's doing everything right? So Diane.
Well done, my faithful servant.
Well done, my faithful servant. But what will you tell them if it ain't time to quit? If they're already doing it right, what will you tell them?
If they're ready to quit and you do what?
If they're already doing it right, but it ain't time to quit, what would you tell them? I mean, like, he's well done. Well done means, okay, you can stop. Okay, you can finish. Okay, but what about
continue doing what you're going to do? You're going to get a reward.
The only person that don't need to continue is the person who's jacking up. If you jacking up, I'm gonna say, oh, continue, go carry on.
Yeah.
If you just messing up, tore from the floor up, making else, I'm just, oh, okay, go ahead, continue. No, that's the person who needs to stop. If you got it right, and remember, he has nothing bad to say of Philadelphia. The thing that, I mean, here's the takeaway. He says the counsel is really to continue. So watch, he does it in 3 parts. Again, the 3 parts. Now y'all out. First, number 1, the advent. I'm coming. Christ is coming. In other words, don't give up now. It's almost over. Just keep holding on. Keep holding on. I'm coming. That's something every person who's looking for his return needs to understand. I wouldn't want to, not that I know, not that I know, y'all, not that I know it's being recorded, not that I know, but you can agitate people if you get on a slot machine that they trying to get back to get some change. Okay, y'all didn't. I don't know that. I don't know that for sure. But here's what they call it: warming the machine up. It's about ready to pay. 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 You know what tease them off is when they quit And then you come up here with your, I'm only going to use 1/4. I'm only going to use one. And then you hit it in they mad at you. And why are they mad? Why are they mad? Because they quit, right? 99.5 won't get it. That's the takeaway. Ain't no need of you being faithful for 99.5 years and then all of a sudden at the end quit. This is what the concept is. He said, no, keep in mind, it may look long, but I'm coming. This is the first thing. Second thing he says, continue. Behold, I come quickly, hold that fast which thou hast. In other words, since you're doing it right and you know you're right, you're growing, you got this, don't let nothing turn you around. I mean, you hold fast to that. And that word hold is, is different because it infers that you got to put energy there. Okay. Long time ago when I was doing a lot of conferences from preachers, I used to have this little statement when we were talking about, because I do some teaching with preachers on sermon preparation. Okay. And I had this analysis about that I got from, y'all know I'm from, famous for the little stories. This came from, I think, one of my dad's friends or something like that. But I remembered it as a young boy. And so it kind of inserted itself in my teaching ritual that I don't think I've ever used at Union. So I'll say this will be a first McAdooism, okay, for the concept. But I would normally tell preachers when I go to a conference, I said, preaching is like holding a wolf by the ears. Holding a wolf, put in the picture, by the ears, okay? It's difficult at best, but it's always better to hold on and let go. Y'all get the picture? Because if you let go of that wolf gonna eat you alive. So hold on to the ears. Hold on to the ears. And that's the concept. What he's saying in this passage is it may seem harder to hold on, but it's always better to hold on to let go. Because if you let go, what really don't mean you no good is gonna really beat you up. Third thing and finally ending the lesson is watch out for the crown caution. There's a crown caution. And a deeper study might justify this. There's a lot of stuff that in life, this life, I think one of the worst things to do is have a season of regret, that in your life, there's something you want to do. And now you had, man, I really wish I had done this. Oh man, and I think the blessing of this life is it soon over? And I'm contrasting that to heaven. I wouldn't want to live a regretful life in heaven, because that's forever, man. That's forever. I mean, here, death is almost merciful because then we get a chance to, start all over again. But there is regretful. Watch what he says. He said, be careful that no man take that crown. What he's talking about is the influence of us letting people influence us to quit. Because when we quit, there are certain things we can't get because of our disobedience of quitting too early that we would have gotten if we stayed on the job and faithful, even in unfavorable times, okay? Because it seems easier now to quit if you're in school. Man, I'm quitting. I ain't going up to school all the time. I'm 11. But then when you work in the rest of your life and people who younger than you are just come on the job and they become your boss and they tell you what to do because they stayed and got the high school education, then you be saying, man, I wish I'd have stayed in school. Now, translate that earthly pattern to what he's saying now for heaven. Stay with it, y'all, because all of the stuff that goes along with the reward for the faithful, you've been faithful over a few things, come on up and enter the joy of the Lord. You don't want trifling people to trick you out of eternal rewards, okay? That's all I got to say. That's the last, that's what he promised and what he told Philadelphia. He said, y'all doing right. Don't let nobody stop you from doing right. Because a lot of people are like, I wouldn't do it if I were you, child. You let them go ahead and have a life of regret, but you stay faithful and do those things, okay? So I went through Revelation I went through Revelation for the Philadelphia church in its entirety. Oh, let me put it all up. Now y'all got it all. That's the whole thing. That's the whole thing, the last part, 12, 13, and 14. Here's the final promises to the overcomer, a pillar in the sanctuary. Why? I've already taught it, because if I give you a pillar in the sanctuary, I've given you stability and security in the sanctuary. Where they used to run from earthquakes because of the city of Philadelphia, he said, no, I got a structure that will hold you even when the grounds are shaking. So we'll find our security, our safety, our stability in the sanctuary. Secondly, he said, I'll make you permanent status. I'm gonna make it so you don't have to go in and out. Because think about it, everybody's gonna come and see God. They're gonna all stand before his throne, good and bad, because they're gonna go to him and then he's gonna say, depart from me, I never knew you. To depart from him meant that you had to come to him. Don't think that going to heaven is the goal. It's staying there. That's the goal, y'all. Okay, y'all catch me? Because you don't want to go and say, oh man, I'm in heaven. He said, oh yeah, let me read the book. Okay, depart from me, I never knew you. Because you didn't make it, you just didn't stay. Okay, so again, permanent status for that person, there will be no in and out to who they overcome. And then there's a paternal priestly adoption that happens as a third thing, and there's a three-part. Number one is I'm gonna give you my name. I'm gonna put my father's name up on you. I'm gonna put my God's name up on you. That's the same thing as spiritual marriage, y'all. When you take the name of the Lord, i.e. Exodus chapter 20, verses 1-3, when he's talking about, taking the Lord's name in vain, it's the idea of marrying to him. He said, when you take his name, God's name is on you, that YHWH is how they would actually spell God's name. We translate Yahweh because there's no vowels in the Hebrew language. And I am Jehovah, if you will. He said, I'm gonna put his name on you. That means it marks you as being his child. All that is a possessive mark, which equates to adoption. Paul talks about it in Romans 5, okay? 5 and 6. Now, he says, not only will you do that, but I'm gonna also give you the city of the New Jerusalem, God shall bring from earth. And then the third thing he says is, I'm going to put my new name on you. And the reason why I put a question mark on that, because we already hit that before. He said, I got a new name, and only the people going to know is going to be the one I reveal it to at that time. So guess what? There's still going to be some revelation about Christ, even when we get to heaven in that particular time. So he's going to mark us with that name. So these are the things he gives to the overcomer. And these are the lessons for the book of Revelation for the church of Philadelphia. Okay, are there any questions? I'm gonna take down my stop sharing. And since I finished the lesson, I'm going to actually send the notes out for this one tonight. The notes will go out with the Bible study being prompted tonight, tonight. Okay, all right. Any questions? Did it make sense? Did it not make sense? Y'all okay? We only got one more church to deal with, and the other church, the last church we'll deal with next week, is a doozy. It's the lukewarm church of Laodicea, and unfortunately, I think it identifies with a lot of church of our current church time. So for those who are futurists who believe that the Laodicean church really talks about the church in the last days, I really ain't got to fight against that one. I think it's there. I just think it's larger than that. I think all 7 churches apply at all 7 seasons, but I will concur that we need to watch the warning of the Laodicean church that we'll see next week, as we'll in chapter 3 in the first section next week. Okay. All right. If there are no questions. No.